Hi everyone, thanks for coming. So kia ora, my name is Sean Bennett and I am CTO and co-founder at Stronghold. Today I'd like to talk to you about how Stronghold is empowering everyday businesses with DeFi. Quick little bit about myself. I've been working at Stronghold since 2017, but back in the day, it was 2013, 2014, I was at medical school. Ripple had just open sourced recently at the time. I actually became one of the early XRPL stablecoin issuers. I ran a gateway. There were a number of gateways back then early on. I issued New Zealand dollar, Australian and USD onto the network. Operated for a little back then. I went onto multiple ledgers. It was a little early, right? We're here, 8 years later. Things are still being built. But it was great to get exposure to XRPL really early on. I then transitioned over to Stronghold in 2017. Stronghold is a financial services company. We provide payment and other financial services to technology providers and merchants through an easy-to-use API. Most of our work is in embedded payments and financial services. So we work with an ecosystem of partners, point of sale, e-commerce, plugin developers, to allow them to offer their customers access to payments and other financial services. So point of sale and e-commerce, they need to be able to provide payments to their merchants. Other plugin developers think, attaching to accounting software maybe. They have all that rich data about how their customers are doing. Maybe they're looking to, integrate their plugin with new ways to access financing by providing that data to us and integrating that way. So we work with all those companies to provide products. There's a few that we also provide ourselves. Coming to Stronghold's mission, we're looking to provide fast, secure, and accessible financial services for all. And I really want to emphasize that for all piece. Generally, when people talk about that in this sort of industry, you might be thinking of underbanked overseas. It's not what we mean here. Certainly, we think that those groups need access to that technology and those financial services. But we thought, let's start with something a little bit easier and closer to home. We're actually talking about small businesses in domestic US. There are a lot of businesses out there that just aren't able to access good financial services. Variety of reasons that may be. Perhaps they have age-restricted products, or there's some other licensing implication. Think alcohol sales, gambling, gaming. There might be problems with compliance. So it's very hard going to a traditional bank and asking for access to those products. Some of them have access to payments, but really struggle with other financial services. Think access to capital, financing. You need money to grow your business. A lot of small businesses in the US can't go to a Wells Fargo, say, and ask for a $50,000 loan to open a new location. It just is not possible for them. So that's the group that we're looking to help out at Stronghold. Here's some concrete stats on that particular problem, where small businesses' needs just aren't being met by traditional financial institutions. 2/3 say their needs are simply not heard. A smaller number say that their financing needs are not met. Those are those looking for loans or cash advances to be able to grow their businesses faster. And the shocking stat on the third piece there is that people of colour are half as less likely to be able to raise the funds even though their business is otherwise probably sound. So these are the groups that we're looking to be able to provide access to. So, Stronghold's solution, merchant financing. We're already integrated with a lot of the technology providers that some of these merchants might be using. Think back to the POS systems, plugged into their accounting. We have access to a lot of their financial data if they choose to share it with us. If they're doing payments through us, we have access to know about their cash flow and revenue numbers. So we can really easily and quickly underwrite a cash advance to them for them to be able to grow their business faster. It's really important to our customer merchants that they are able to access those funds quickly. So we look to try and make an approval within 72 hours. A recent example of, I remember one of our merchants needing funds really fast was they had an upcoming healthcare premium that was due, or their coverage would lapse for the employees. So being able to get those funds into their bank account quickly is really important. Unfortunately, we're still beholden to traditional payment systems, so there's going to be some time lag on that payment out, It would be great to see a future where that was all on ledger, but that's just not the world we live in today. Here's a particular example of what the impact on a small business might be. This is a medical clinic that was unable to get financing through traditional financial institutions. They were doing credit card processing and debit card through us. We were able to advance those funds to them. They used it to remodel their clinic a whole year earlier than they otherwise would have if they were just going off their own cash flow, and that led to a 20% increase in revenue. Great for the business, also good for us because we're processing their payments. So everyone wins in that scenario. Let's look at a quick flow of funds, and I'm going to come back to this a couple times as we look at traditional layer and then where we bring the DeFi piece in. So I've simplified this a lot, but essentially there's three main pieces. We've got the capital contributor, you might call them an investor, depends on the actual product, but it's the person putting the money into the lending pool. In our MVP, where everything was TradFi, this was Stronghold. We'd make a pool contribution, money coming in, ACH wire, nothing new there, all domestic US rails, into a capital pool. The money sits in the capital pool and awaits for approval on one of those financing pieces. It's that 3-day application. When those financing payments are approved, they go out via ACH to our merchant, and our merchant's free to do whatever they wish with them at that stage. Go remodel their store, buy more inventory, to do promotions, marketing, whatever they've been approved to do. Now, how do we get the money back? This is the essentially money from customer to the merchant flow. We have a customer coming in, e-commerce are in store, they're going to make that payment at time of sale, card, ACH, there's a number of other modalities that we take, but those are the main two. Lands at our account with our sponsor bank, and we do a rolling daily settlement out to that merchant. So we have the opportunity to capture their funds in flight, which means it's much easier for us to recapture payments. We're not having to take the money after the fact from our merchant. And so here's what that repayment looks like. The repayment goes back into the capital pool, so that's repayment both of capital and the interest on the advance. When the capital pool has enough funds to satisfy a disbursement back to the capital contributor, they can pull those funds out. And some of you familiar with DeFi lending might see where this is going to head. So it looks like we've solved the problem, right? Stronghold is able to give all these small businesses access to financial services because we've got more data, we process their payments, we're able to overlook some pieces of their history that maybe a traditional lender might not. But there's one big problem that we still have. Stronghold can't underwrite all of those loans itself, right? We're a startup. We've been able to underwrite a lot of them ourselves based off our own books, but we need outside contribution. The problem in traditional finance a lot of the time is the source of those funds, the investors putting the money in, won't allow them to go to these small businesses. Whether it's the nature of the business, the particular industries they might be playing in, could be other implicit biases or stereotypes at play, mean that it's actually the funder a lot of the time, the person putting the money in, that is restricting where those funds end up going. And so it really impacts those latter two problems there. So we need to try and find a new supply for those funds. Where can we get those funds from? And so the solution we ended up landing on for now is DeFi funded merchant financing, an alternative source of financing. Take a new class of investor in and connect that back to the traditional world. A lot of the times, even more sophisticated DeFi investors are going to be a lot more flexible with where money is deployed. They're still going to care about the raw performance of that business, but they may care less about the nature of the business. They're looking at some really, really oversized returns because these companies can't get financing elsewhere. It ticks a lot of boxes for both sides. In rolling out this product, we had three really core goals. Number one, this is our most important, do not change the merchant behavior. It would be fine to us if the merchant doesn't have a clue where the funds are coming from, and that's the case in most times. They don't care. All they want is access to that capital. They are too busy running their businesses. That's what we need them to be doing to make sure we get the repayment. They cannot be learning about crypto. We can't have them onboarding onto crypto exchanges or other platforms. Don't want them figuring out secret keys wallet management, anything like that to start with, right? Maybe another 10 years. But right now, we can't have them doing that. Stronghold has certainly been part of projects in the past where we have had to attempt to get merchants to onboard even a little bit. Even if it's just that question about, oh, I heard something about a secret key, how do I manage that? Instantly becomes a problem with their security advisors. So we had to make sure we're not changing that behavior. Second, we don't want to change the DeFi funding behavior either, right? You might think it's easier to bring the funder who is probably used to both TradFi and DeFi along for the ride and bring them closer to the traditional process that the merchant is going through. We didn't think that was the case. We want them to be living in the true DeFi experience. So it's all, MetaMask, wallet management. They can use their existing multi-sig protocols. Don't change their behavior either. Keep it as close to what they know as possible. And then we need a player to bridge the two worlds together. Yes, this does mean that we are going to introduce some centralization. The goal isn't to make everything DeFi. The goal is simply to bring the value of DeFi back into the traditional world. So that's the role of Stronghold as an administrator in this product. So going back to the flow of funds, if we were to look at it now from a DeFi point of view, I've highlighted the changes in blue. We had the DeFi capital contributor coming in on the left. Now they're making a pool contribution as an on-ledger transaction. That there goes onto an on-ledger capital pool. That's the behavior they're used to, right? They're signing into whatever wallet they're using. They're pushing out the transaction. They can send it around to all their multi-sig parties as normal. No change of behavior. Yes, they have to be aware that the other side of this transaction is not going to be totally on-chain, but you would do the due diligence in any project that you're investing in. So we don't really feel that that's new behavior as such for them to have to learn. Stronghold acts as the bridge. We transfer the funds back off-chain. The funds would have come in as some sort of stablecoin, USDC, USDT. And we can make the financing payment out to the merchant. The merchant's applied through the dashboard that they have access to on the Stronghold side. They get the money on traditional rails, ACH. No behavior change for them. They don't need to know where the money's come from. If we look back to repayments, similarly, we're able to make repayments on the ledger as well. Again, Stronghold has to act as some sort of bridge. We need to take the funds from the traditional world, normal banking system, and now on-ramp them onto whichever ledger the capital pool has been on previously. And then, as per normal, the DeFi capital contributor or the investor can disperse those funds to themselves from the pool. So that's the experience they're used to today. They're just interacting with that capital pool. A lot of the times where that money is actually used as opaque, even today if you were to use a lot of the DeFi lending protocols, right? Particularly for retail users that may only be looking at return and not going any further. So we have this sort of hybrid here where both sides get what they're used to. So that's current state with how we run the product today. And it works. Both parties are happy. Where can we move to from here? So this is the sort of, we've landed, how can we expand from that? Instead of tackling everything at once, let's just start and make small steps towards, I think, the future that a lot of us in this room are probably imagining down the track. Stronghold is currently piloting sale payments, so the first piece between the customer and our funds with our sponsor bank via stablecoin or other crypto. Whether that means the customer is actually using crypto isn't necessary. It's the settlement of the funds to us that occurs via crypto that's important. So they might still be using a traditional debit card. There might be a third-party provider in place who settles the transaction to us via a stablecoin. But that means that between the end of that payment settlement all the way through to the DeFi capital contributor, we can have that entire transaction flow now on ledger. It was a small change, but straight away we've got a full flow that actually happens on ledger. So the only bridging piece that actually needs to happen now is the off-ramping between us and that merchant getting their funds through ACH. They need their funds back in the traditional world until such time as there's other payment rails that they can use it. But now you're able to bring in smart contract functionality to ensure that funds are deducted correctly at the time of that rolling settlement. So you can have automatically those repayment amounts being taken out, right? Our rates are agreed up front. They're fixed yields, you could say. So very easy to encode into some contracts. And now we give a level of decentralization to that DeFi capital contributor. So you could expand that to a slightly wider audience of contributors at that stage. If we were to take this one step further and go to a possible 5-10 years out, you could imagine, instead of settling to that merchant directly on traditional rails, if we made sure that whatever payment mechanism we offered them was interoperable with other payment mechanisms that were out there in the B2B supply chain world, this is one of the reasons why interoperability is going to be so important, we can keep the funds on ledger for longer, right? And that is certainly going to be a goal of a lot of players going forwards. So I've taken out some of the transaction information, but now essentially you could imagine in a simplistic way a stablecoin being used throughout the entire piece. Only at the very ends, when a merchant or a B2B supply chain participant needs to interact with someone outside of whatever payment methods are being used, would we need to off-ramp them via ACH or a wire. So that's the very future possible state that we may get to. So that's merchant financing in a nutshell for us. One other piece that we've done recently is our rewards program to build trust and loyalty with our merchants and integrators. The reason that I wanted to bring this up was because not only do we offer this to merchants, but we found it really important to offer it to the developers and the integrators of the platforms as well. It seems like a lot of the time there's all these amazing benefits for merchants coming on board, cashback schemes, reduction in fee, promotions. We also offer them our SHX token, but the integrators tend to miss out. There's some other arrangement for them, but it never looks as sweet as the loyalty program that everyone else gets. So we decided to bring integrators and developers into that very same loyalty program, and that has worked really well for us. So certainly encourage, if that's possible, to look at that. The other thing that this has allowed us to do is for the merchants that do care about crypto, and I was surprised to see how many did, even coming out of very traditional looking companies, because we do offer a crypto redemption, some of them have looked into it and they've said, hey, I've heard about crypto, I'd love to dip my toes in, can I take that as a redemption scheme? And then they've gone and learnt about it. They've gone and downloaded a wallet, they've figured out how to use exchanges. That's great. We're not forcing them to go on that journey, but we are more than happy to help them along if they want to go on that themselves. And so thinking back to that case study that I mentioned earlier, where we had the medical clinic, they're one of the examples of a company that did this. And they've been withdrawing out through crypto. We're very surprised to see them send a wallet address over to us one day. And we're happy to help them that way. So if we ever needed to pilot something where we've got the funds on ledger for longer, we've already got some candidates. So it's a way to sort of also filter out who might be good candidates for a pilot launch of something more on ledger in the future. So to wrap it all up, the key learnings from rolling out our merchant financing and rewards program: don't have to throw the whole thing on ledger from day one. We've certainly tried to do this before. We're not going to do it again. We've learned our lessons. Sometimes you'll need to do this, I admit. There'll be projects that truly won't suit this sort of hybrid, bridged world. But where this is possible, I would really recommend it. Start by tackling the bits that make sense, own the customers that you need to own later, and expand from there. You can bring them along for the ride a lot easier when they're already seeing the value that you're delivering. Also importantly, it means that we can start generating revenue from the product a lot earlier. And that's important for sustainability. Think about the recent economic, situations we've had recently. It will put you in a better position for that. Keep user behavior familiar. They only care about the benefits of what they're getting at the end of the day, in the traditional world especially. DeFi users might care a lot more about how things actually work, but those traditional businesses, as I said before, too busy running their normal everyday businesses. They don't care. Just give them what they need. But we also did find that we don't want to change adoption for DeFi users either. The TradFi stuff can scare people. And that last bit that I just quickly touched on, let the developers and integrators participate in the loyalty programs. Everyone shares in the success. You need them to be building into your products. Stronghold as a platform, having APIs, we really need to be incentivizing these players to work for us. So letting them into the same scheme is a great selling point, keeps it sticky. Everyone's aligned to drive the same success, right? They are incentivized to have their merchants use our product as well. And that's all I wanted to go through right now. Thanks very much for your time. We've got 4 minutes left. If there's any questions, feel free to come up to me at the front. But thanks very much for attending.